Hi there. Bit of a different video today, mainly because I'm not doing any mechanics at the moment. I'm in the middle of another massive DIY project on the house. I'm actually repointing the back of the house, which is just like huge. But hopefully I'll be finished for Christmas, and then I'll be able to do some more mechanics, and I'll be posting some more videos on doing engines and so on after Christmas. But I thought, it's coming up to Christmas. Yes. And so I'm sure some of you are probably wanting to buy maybe some wonderful Christmas presents, or suggest to your friends and family what Christmas presents they might buy you. And so I thought, well, why don't I make a video trying to sell some of these wonderful books that I've written over the years? That sounds like a good idea to me. So I thought, why not? In all honesty, there's some books here, and I'm going to tell you a bit about them, because honestly I think some of you out there will find them enjoyable and worth getting. So what I've done over the years, I've written 4 major restoration manuals, okay? And I'm just going to talk you through them. This is the very first restoration manual I ever did, and this is on how to restore an E-Type Jaguar. Yeah, an E-Type Jaguar, in my case, a Series 2 1968 fixed head coupe. And now what happened, the story is, how this all began, is that I was just beginning to restore my E-Type. And how long did it take? It took me 9 years to restore this E-Type, 9 years, because of course I was working at the time. We moved house in the middle of the restoration. I had to build a garage at one point and so on. But one way or another, it took me 9 years. Now, shortly after I started stripping the car down, ready to rebuild it, a new club started, the E-Type Club, dedicated just to E-Types, not to Jaguars, but just E-Types. And Philip Porter, who runs the club and ran there was a big monthly magazine that went with it, but of course, with it only just starting the club, they didn't have much copy. They just started the club. Well, what are you going to write about? So Philip, I went down to the launch of the new E-Type Club, and I got chatting to Philip, and I said, I'm just restoring my car. He said, oh, that's interesting. He said, why don't you do a monthly article on how's it going with your restoration? And I said, oh, okay. And of course it took me 9 years. So monthly article over 9 years, well, nearly 9 years, because I'd already started, I'd already been doing it for a couple of years by then. So when we finished, when I actually finished many years later, and the car eventually looked like this. I don't know if you can see it, how well you can see it, but that's how it looked at one point. But when I'd finished, then Philip said, I tell you what, we've got a book here. You've got the restoration from start to finish in sort of monthly format. And so all I had to do was to sort of rewrite some of the chapters basically. And then we had a restoration guide from start to finish on how to rebuild your E-Type at home. That's the important thing. It's a DIY. Yeah, some of those pictures, where it used to look like. It's a complete DIY restoration. So it's not done, by our professionals. It's done by me and my little garage. The garage that's downstairs where all the bikes are. It was done in there. How I did it now, I don't know. Because there was only just enough to get the car in, let alone do any work on it. So and the premise behind this manual, this is really important. This manual and all the other manuals is that they're written by someone doing the job for the first time, me, writing about their experiences and all the problems that they've encountered to help those people doing it for the first time themselves. So it's written by a novice for novices, and that is the premise behind all of the manuals, and it's really important to understand that. My thinking at the time, and my thinking for all of these manuals, and I'll go into this a bit more later, is you know, if you're an expert, then you don't really need a manual, you know, so already out there were various other manuals. You've generally got the manufacturer's detailed workshop manual, and you've got the likes of the Haynes manual or the Climber manual. But I found, you know, the thing about those is basically, in a nutshell, they say, you know, insert part A into part B, in a nutshell. But of course, in reality, part A is rusted solid. It won't go into part B. It doesn't fit. It's the wrong part. It's broken. It's bent. Whatever. So inserting part A into part B is not a one sentence insert part A into part B. It's a 5-day job, you know, trying to sort the parts out and get them de-rusted and find replacement parts or whatever, working out which way round the damn thing goes, because you can actually find out it goes in either way, but obviously it's important which, and so on. And it's all things like that they don't tell you in the manuals. And so that's the premise behind these, that they are for novices, and they are designed not, very, very important this, not to replace the workshop manuals, but to fill in those gaps. You know, where it says put part A into part B, then, you know, I go through, you know, how to do that. But how to, you know, put in part A into part B is already in the workshop manual. So I thought, well, this pointless reinventing the wheel, that's already written down. So all these manuals are designed to go alongside the existing workshop manuals, and often like the Haynes or Climber manual. So if you are going to rebuild a car or bike or whatever, then you need sort of my manual and the workshop manual. So I thought, well, what's the point in me rewriting what's already in a manual that you can buy, you know, and they're much more skilled and knowledgeable than me. They've got all the facts and figures and dimensions and so on. My manuals are, you know, like, well, you know, I tried this and then it wouldn't work. So, you know, I couldn't put part A into part B, so I had to think about it, and I contacted the experts and they suggested doing this, and then I ground this down and, oh, I completely ruined it, so I had to buy a new one. And then I realised that it was putting around the wrong way, or, you know, the part number had changed or whatever. So, all the manuals deal with a complete restoration. So they're quite readable. It's like from the start, buying an old bike or an old car that's a wreck and doing it up. So it's a story of a restoration, number one. So they are quite readable. They were never designed as dip-in workshop manuals. And a lot of people, when they buy them, they go, all right, how do you fit the windscreen wiper? Right, let's have a look. Windscreen wiper section, it doesn't go into much detail on that, because the detail for that is in the workshop manual. Okay, now, if there's something that I need to write about, and I say, look, I've followed the manual on doing this wiper, and I can get it to work. And I realise now that it wasn't clear, and what they meant was this. And that's where this manual comes into its own. All these manuals are like that. There's something like, there's getting on for 1,000 photos in every manual. All right, I'll try and show you what I've found. Okay, colour, all colour. Okay, so first one is the E-Type manual. All these manuals are for sale on Amazon. Well, they're for sale anywhere in any bookshop. The easiest way, obviously, is to look on Amazon. You put my name into, bring up Amazon wherever you are in the world, type my name, Chris Rook, into the Amazon search bar, and these hopefully should all come up. Okay, so the second manual I then wrote, following on from the E-Type manual, because unfortunately I had to sell the E-Type. It still breaks my heart today. 9 years it took me, but then I had to retire. Basically, I was a teacher and I was burnt out, and I had to go. I had to take early retirement because, you know, I'd had enough. I'd done 30 years and that was it. The problem is I couldn't afford to retire. I had a mortgage and so on. So the only way I could retire was to sell the E-Type, because of course, by the time I finished it, they were worth silly money. So I sold the E-Type. I only had it for about a year. After 9 years rebuilding it, it was immaculate. I was invited by Jaguar to the 50th anniversary, and I went over there to Geneva. They turned up with an F1 lorry, you know, like a, you know, and put my car in the back of this F1 lorry and drove it over to Geneva, and then flew me to Geneva to the Parc des, oh dear me, I should remember, Parc des Princes, is it? I can't remember. Where they did the E-Type launch back in 1961, and they like recreated that 50 years later. because it was a beautiful car when I finished it. It was immaculate. And that was bodywork, upholstery, engine and everything. Anyway, having sold the E-Type, then I did have a bit of money left over. And so I was able to buy some motorbikes, and I'd always wanted a Triumph Trident, so I bought a Triumph T150, which at the time was all I could afford. And so then I thought, well, look, I've done that manual. I know I'm rebuilding this Triumph T150. Again, I bought it as a wreck. Well, it was a running bike, but it needed rebuilding. And so I thought, I know, I'll do another manual, because I enjoyed doing that manual. And I thought I'd do another one in exactly the same format. I'd never had a Trident before. But, you know, I'm an experienced mechanic. I've been mechanicking all my life. So, you know, I know my way around mechanics, but not about particular models. So again, I bought this, and again, it's a story of a novice rebuilding a Trident, all the problems and how to overcome them and so on, and, you know, all the things I did wrong, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, normal thing. And it does say on the back, written by a novice for novices. Because people sometimes say to me, you know, this is a bit of a con, isn't it? You're a novice, writing a manual. But, you know, I go over again that that's the premise, that's the idea behind the manual. That it's a novice. It's, you know, it's not written again by an expert saying insert part A into part B. Of course, there are drawbacks because I don't have that full amazing knowledge that an expert would have. So that's the sort of downside of it. But I still think they're, you know, for someone who wants to rebuild a bike for the first time, they got some mechanical skills, but not fantastic, and they want to rebuild this particular bike or car or whatever, then I think these are good. But come back to it, along with the manual, the restoration manual I've written, I've also got the Haynes manual. I've also got the workshop manual, you know, the Triumph workshop manual, and I've also got the parts catalogue. That's what I do for every single manual. Okay, Haynes manual, workshop manual, parts catalogue. All right, and my manual. Then together, between them, you've got everything you need to rebuild your bike or whatever. And I think it's really important to say that, because sometimes people buy the manual and say, well, it doesn't seem to have everything in there. You know, no, it hasn't, because I thought, what's the point of rewriting it? It's already written down in there. But sometimes this doesn't make sense. Simple as that, and you can't work it out, and that's where this comes in. Then this was a new publisher, and I finished the T150, and I actually then, ironically, came into a little bit of money, luckily. And the publisher said, yeah, it's okay, but you really need to do the T160 as well as the T150, the later model. Now, luckily, I just come into some money, so, well, okay. So I went out and bought myself a T160, which I always wanted. To be quite honest, I bought the T150 because I couldn't afford a T160 at the time. But then, having come into a bit of money, I went out, I could buy a T160. So that's why this manual covers 2 Tridents, the T150 and T160. And so it is in 2 sections, rebuilding the T150, then rebuilding the T160. Again, in sort of story format. So even if you're not thinking of rebuilding one, I think you'll find them interesting to read. I do. I'm not just trying to sell you something that you wouldn't want. I think, you know, people I know, like I've read the E-Type manual, who have no interest in cars whatsoever, or mechanics, and they've enjoyed it. So that is the restoration manual for the Triumph triples. So that's Tridents, T150, T160, and Rocket 3s and Hurricanes. Okay. Then we've got the Kawasaki manual. Now, I bought, when I come into the money, I bought the T160, then I rushed out and I bought a Z1A. Because I always wanted one. And so I thought I'll do a manual on this, but the Z1 was already rebuilt. The Z1A was already rebuilt. So I bought a Z900, which is virtually identical to a Z1A, and rebuilt that. But then the money ran out, and so I had to sell the Z1A I sold the Z1A because I didn't rebuild it, and I kept the Z900 because I completely rebuilt this. Again, this was an American, like these bikes, they were both re-imported from America. All my bikes have been re-imported from America. A really good source of bikes. The E-Type that was a complete heap. I was completely ripped off. You know, it was a rusty, but it turns out it had been in a major crash. I ended up with a new body shell. That's how bad it was. You know, I didn't look at it when I bought it. It was just filler. Basically, I just got it was just filler. The whole thing was bent and twisted. You know, anyway, never mind. Right. So then I went on to the Kawasaki manual, and again I've got the factory workshop, which has part numbers in it. Yeah. And the Haynes manual again on the Zs. So again, they're not designed to be standalone really, but you know, they're your friend in the garage, and again very readable. So again nearly 1,000 photos. There's nearly 1,000 photos in just about every manual. Okay, and then I painted it Z1A colours because I love the colours of the Z1A. But this is actually a Z900 from America, where it was made. Although, if we're going to be splitting hairs, this bike is actually a KZ900 because it's a rather confusing title. This restoration manual covers Z1s, Z and KZ 900s, Z and KZ 1000s. A Z900 was made in Japan, a KZ 900 was made in America because they were so successful they established a factory in Nebraska in America. So if the bike is actually badged KZ 900, it's actually made in America, which mine was, but I hate the KZ sort of logo, so I put a Z900 logo on, although it should, officially mine should be a KZ because it is actually an American bike. I say I re-imported that, but of course I didn't re-imported it, I imported it because it was never exported in the first place. Then we come to the Commando. This is my sort of latest and last manual. I haven't written one for a few years. I don't know if I'll do another one because they're a huge amount of work, and the problem is I have no money. Now I'm retired, and if I was going to do another one, then as I did really with this one, I'd have to sell one of my bikes in order to buy a heap, and then all the cost of doing them. You know, because I do a nut and bolt rebuild. That's the only way I can do it, and that's very expensive. You know, so for instance, the Commando, that cost me, the whole restoration, buying the bike in the first place, this cost me 15,000, and that's doing it all myself. But that's because it's a complete nut and bolt restoration and a stainless steel bolts. That's what I do with all the bikes. You know, I do top spec. So the Norton Commando, again, just like the others, I bought it. I've never worked on a Commando before, not really. Apart from my friend had one when we were at uni together, which was a complete heap. It's all written about in here, the story of poor Alan's Commando. But again, along with the Haynes manual, now there's a bit of a sort of funny coincidence about this. That this is the Haynes manual. Now it turns out my neighbour's good friend, you know, by pure chance, turns out that that's his Commando. That Haynes approached him, which I don't know, 1980 or whatever it was. He's a pretty old guy now, and they rebuilt his bike for him. I'm not sure what the arrangement was, but yeah. So by total coincidence, my neighbour's friend, that's his Commando. Anyway, so we've got the Haynes manual, we've got the parts catalogue, and then we've got the factory workshop manuals. I've got one for Commandos up to 75, and then I've got the Mark III manual as well, because I was writing a manual I was rebuilding a Mark III, but I also, because the Mark III is quite a bit different to the early models in some ways, with electric start and so on, I had the other workshop manuals so I could see where the differences were and refer to them. Okay, so they're all good. They go between about 20 and 30 quid. I think if you look on Amazon, the prices change, I think, depending on demand, depending where you are in the world. But that's, you know, if you hunt on eBay, you hunt around, you can probably get them cheaper. All right, last couple of things. When I bought my bikes, these little ones, the Essential Buyer's Guide. So I had the Essential Buyer's Guide to the Z, got the Essential Buyer Guide to the Commando when I bought the bikes. Really good. Then I realised that there wasn't actually an Essential Buyer's Guide to the triples. So I thought, oh, well, I'll write one. So there is also the Essential Buyer's Guide to the Triumph Trident and Rocket 3, again on Amazon. And you know, that just tells you about all the different models and so on. I had a bit of a problem writing this one. I'll tell you why, because you don't know what to put in there. So it's a buyer's guide for a Trident. So you want to put in specific problems that Tridents have that you want to look for. But then how much do you put in general things like worn chains and you know, worn steering bearings and so on, which is common to every bike. You know, how much do you put in specifically about Tridents and how much you put in about what you look for on any bike? And I found that difficult to sort of balance because the publishers, in this particular case, had like a format. They gave you a format, you have to like fit in with it. And so I found that difficult because the format didn't really follow what I wanted to write. But anyway, that's, if you don't know anything about triples, that's a good one. And this has brought me so much trouble because of course they're trying to sell books, and so they say your mark expert is whatever the author is. So on this case it says your mark expert is Chris Rook. So everyone's going, oh, you're a mark expert now, are you? Well, I'm not. I don't consider myself as one, but of course they're not going to put on, you know, the author who knows a little bit about Trident, but not much. You know, it's not going to sell many, is it? But I do think I'm pretty knowledgeable about Tridents. I mean, now I've had them 6 years, probably longer than that, 7 years now. I've had both my Tridents. So I've rebuilt them both, you know, several times over now, and rebuilt engines for other people. So I know pretty much about them. But yeah, I took a lot of stick over that one, your mark expert. Finally, on a slightly different note, there's my sort of book. I call it a novel. It's not a novel. It's like an autobiography of my time when I was at Portsmouth Poly, when I was a student in the mid-70s, when all these bikes were current, when the whole bike thing was going mad, and it's just like my recollections when I was between ages of 18 and 21. You know, the crazy years. I'm sure you know what I mean. The sex, the drugs, the rock and roll, the motorbikes, the rests, the time in being banned from driving, being arrested, spending several nights in cells and so on, touring France on my old match list and so on. Not just motorbikes, it's all the rest of it. Like my life as a student back in the mid-70s, class of 79 it's called. So that's obviously a book as opposed to a manual, but the advantage of this is very cheap on Amazon, very cheap, and so if you were like my age in like mid-70s, late 70s is your sort of era, then you know I think you'd enjoy it, and if you were younger or something, then you might enjoy it as well, because to know what life was like back then. It's amazing actually. A few people who are my age have like read it and said it's amazing how much we've got in common. Obviously, you know, different, but you know, similar experiences. Okay, so that's it. I'm thinking that's your wonderful Christmas. You know, that's my big sort of book sale video, because I thought, well, why not? Christmas is coming. Maybe someone will want to buy one of the books. I don't sell them. They're all done through the publisher. They're all done through booksellers and that. So don't ask me for them, please. But you know, I think if you're into motorcycle mechanics, or you know, classic car mechanics, or you know, the sort of the drug fueled eras of the 70s, whatever, then you know, maybe worth getting one and having a look. Okay, and also of course I need the money. Don't forget, you know, you're giving to a worthy cause. Right, that's about it. I'm going to say kind of happy Christmas, because I don't think I'll be doing another video you know, till after Christmas, because I say I'm doing this massive DIY thing, which is killing me. But hopefully I'll be back up after Christmas doing some mechanics and so on. Okay, thanks. See you later.